Are you ready
for Big Talk with Chris and Gregg? Sorry, I got a little in the mood.
That's all right, dude.
Summoning my inner Triple H.
I loved it, man. It's cool.
That's going to be, I don't know if you guys are ready for some wrestling talk. I know that some people that I've been speaking to want to hear a little bit more about the wrestling.
All right.
So this is going to be we're going to go back to wrestling, talking about wrestling like we did episode number 2. But before we get to that, let's take care of business. We're on Instagram at Big Talk CG. We're also available on email, bigtalkcg@gmail.com. Guess what, Greg?
What?
There's another surprise. You know, I always like to surprise you, dude.
Yes, I love
I always
it.
like to surprise you. And it's not the old hole in my pocket trick this time, dude.
Now pull my finger.
We are on Twitter. Did I tell you we're on Twitter?
Yes.
I did.
We're on Twitter.
We're on
Nice.
Twitter.
We're tweeting.
We're on the Twitter machine.
So,
I don't know.
yes.
We're tweeting. I don't know what they call it. We don't have. I don't know if we have any followers yet because we haven't really announced that out to the nation. So let's see who's going to be our first follower on Twitter.
All right.
And then we'll retweet you to the other follower until we get another one. So yeah, let's see. Last episode we did our Halloween special.
Loved it.
I thought it was great.
I thought it was funny, man. We did some good stuff on there.
Good stuff. Talking about scary movies and stuff. If you guys haven't heard it yet, go back and check it out. We talk about everything Halloween, candy, trick-or-treating, costumes, everything. It was good. It was
Scaredy
good.
Cat Chris over here can't watch horror
couldn't-
movies without walking away.
I couldn't sleep for a day or two after we did that episode. Couldn't get sleep.
It's because you're fired up, man.
I
That's
know,
why
I'm
it
so
is.
fired up. Okay, guys, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this episode, and we're going to talk about. Did we decide what we were talking about? We're talking about factions.
Correct.
And you guys know how we like to do it. We do not like to rank. We do not like to go 10 to 1, 1 to 10.
Yeah, nothing like that.
We don't like to do that because I think that kind of limits what you can talk about. You know, let's just freestyle.
Let's just throw.
It's all in the hips.
Ooh,
It's all
all
in the
in the
hips. So we're going to go ahead and start talking about some factions. And, you know, we both do have our Big Talk notebooks today. So, you know what, Greg? I'm going to go ahead and hoping that you're not going to lead. Well, go ahead and lead off with everyone. Who do you want to talk about? What's one of your favorite all-time factions, stables of all time?
The NWO.
New World Order.
Yes, I love it, man. I loved it when it first began, when it was small with certain wrestlers on there, you know, Hall, Nash, Hogan, and, you know, add a few guys to it. You know, if they kept it under single digits, it was good. But when they started doing double digits, it got too crazy for me.
Yeah, dude. So the NWO was really huge for WCW. It was when they had Hogan and the Outsiders.
Yeah.
And they came together. That was 96 Bash at the Beach, where they just had Hall and Nash had came over from WWE. Diesel, Razor Ramon, for you guys that don't know. And then they had the whole tag match. And the tag match, I believe, was it against Macho Man and Luger? Macho Man and Luger, Macho Man Sting, a combination of that situation. And they're supposed to have a third man. Or maybe it was all three of them. I think it was three of them against the Outsiders.
Okay.
We're going to have our third man.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
You know, the Outsiders start beating everybody up. And then Hogan comes out and he's like, oh, I'm going to get you. And then the greatest turn in the history of professional wrestling, as far as I'm concerned. And the NWO started, and ever since then, they've been just too sweet.
Heck yeah, man. I really loved the NWO Black and White. They also turned into their other part of their side project, which was the NWO Red, the Wolfpack. And, you know, it started off going differently. That's why I said it got too big for me. It just was too much.
It got too big. I agree. You know, they had all, you know, the Black and White, which is the OG. They had the Wolfpack. I like the Wolfpack. I like their entrance music.
Yeah.
It was pretty killer. And then they had the Latino World Order. Is that
Yes. Latino World Order.
That
with
was
that Eddie Guerrero, man. I had that.
But you know, when it was just a smaller faction, basically when it kind of first started, when it was just Nash and Hall, Hogan, excuse me, and then Six joined them also, and then I think Bischoff. I think those were really. I might be missing one, maybe two people that really don't matter anyways, because it's probably like Scott Norton or some shit like that, or Virgil.
DiBiase.
But when it was just, you know, DiBiase wasn't even wrestling, so I guess he could have been okay. He would have been like a manager type, like
Correct.
Bischoff, so he doesn't really matter. But when it was just like those first four or five, maybe six in-ring wrestlers,
yeah,
I was still good with it. But over time, like you're saying, it just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and you started to be like, I don't like them anymore. I don't like this anymore.
Yeah, the Buff Bagwells, like you said, the Scott Nortons, the I don't know, whoever else joined.
Everybody else. Kurt Hennig got in there. I mean, he was a great wrestler. He didn't. You know, you look at the list of wrestlers they started to get in that faction, and a lot of them, I kind of wonder like, why were they ever part of it? Because they didn't need it. They had so many good wrestlers that they didn't really need to be in a group like that.
It wasn't even the Giant on there, Macho Man. I mean, Macho Man still had that. Yeah, there was just so many guys. So it got too big for the bridges.
It got too big for the bridges.
Bridges.
All
right,
it's okay. The two guys that I want to talk about that aren't even in the NWO that I always thought was cool were DDP and Goldberg, because they always wanted those guys in there, and they never, especially DDP. Remember, they tried to recruit him, and then there was that episode of Nitro where everybody thought that he was going to join.
Yeah,
and dude, he diamond cut 3-4 guys in the middle of the ring, one up in the crowd, and you still see it. Like it's probably one of the top 10 best images of Monday Nitro of all time, when he's out in the crowd showing the diamond cutter sign. The whole crowd's going bananas.
Heck yeah.
I remember that was, well, you know, that was pretty great, you know, that he didn't join in, because everybody was joining at that time. So it was nice to see someone that just did not want to go with what was at that time the status quo.
Correct. I mean, it could have been a storyline that they just kept in. Same thing with Goldberg. You're right, man. But you know, Goldberg and the streak was going on, and they wanted him to join. And yeah, there was a lot of that, dude. There was a lot of those.
Let's turn the corner. Let's talk about a faction that was going on at the same time in WWE. Let's talk about Degeneration X.
DX.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
They first started. It was Shawn Michaels, Triple H, China, and Rick Rude. That was the first
incarnation of it.
And kind of doing the limited time that I had to kind of, you know, research stuff, because I don't have an iron trap for a mine. I'm not sure exactly what happened at what point where Shawn Michaels, I don't know if he got injured, but he left or he was gone, and Triple H kind of took the reins for DX.
Yeah, I think he took some time off. Or got injured and played it off.
Is that when he lost his smile? Was that?
Yeah,
that time,
I think that's when it was.
And he left, and Triple H really ran with it. That's when they got X-Pac.
Yeah.
And they got the NewAge Outlaws.
Correct.
Lost Rick Rude.
And kept China.
They were.
So China wasn't either a valet anymore. Now she was, you know, one of the guys wrestling too.
First female, probably only female Intercontinental Champion.
Probably.
Yeah, I think so.
Probably.
She was. The cool thing about her is that she wasn't. You bring up the word valet. I don't even know if she was that. I think that she was introduced as Triple H's bodyguard.
Yes.
It might have been, and she was, because she didn't do anything but stand there with her arms crossed and get involved.
Correct.
That was it. She didn't talk. You rarely heard her talk.
Yeah,
that voice like this or whatever it was. That wasn't a good imitation, but you know what I mean.
Didn't talk or didn't smile, but just
man, that
was a
faction,
roadblock. Yeah.
I mean, you talk about the NWO, and they had titles. You know, Hogan was always the world champ, and you know, the Outsiders had the tag team titles a lot. But in DX, they had the world title. They always had the tag team championship. I don't really know how they were going with the Intercontinental, who were the major players at that time. But I do remember the New Age Outlaws always having those tag team belts. They were like 9-time champions.
Something like that.
But when you have Shawn Michaels and Triple H basically running the show in your faction, you can't go wrong with that.
It was good. It was good. You know what? What I liked about DX is they stopped at what we'll say 5, and they did, and that was good enough. They didn't have to add 25 other more guys to be DX, and then at the end of DX or whatever time Sean and Hunter wanted to come back, it was just DX. It was just 2 of them. You know, just still 2 guys towards the end of.
I thought it got cheesy when it was just like 10 years later, and they were like DX tonight, one night only, and they'd come out and be like, oh.
But you know, people still want that. I mean, when you want to go to a show, I mean, if you heard Stone Cold was going to wrestle on SmackDown in December here in LA at Staples Center, you would be like, oh, you know what? I'm going to go.
You know what? Because you just hit the nail on the head. A lot of times when these guys are coming out, they're not wrestling. They're just coming out.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think that the last time that they came out as DX that they were there wrestling. They were just there flapping their gums, and then X-Pac came out in the New Age Outlaws, and they were just out there telling everybody to suck it. and that was it. I mean, that's what, you know, I mean, I'll say it, you know, that's why I kind of am over The Rock.
Okay.
When he comes back, you know what? He wrestles some of the time, but dude, don't just come back and say catchphrase, 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 catchphrase. Lift your eyebrow and then leave.
You don't love it, man?
No.
You don't want to see it?
I loved it. I loved it during the Attitude Era.
You loved it then, not
it's the
too
same,
much in there.
No, not anymore.
All right.
Come back and wrestle.
That's what you want. But he's too big for his big. He's too big now.
Too big for his what?
He's too big, movie star, to, you know, wrestle or do stuff. But, you know, in his movies, you see once in a while they do wrestling moves. They do a lot of rock bottoms every once in a while.
That's just Steven Seagal moves. Steven Seagal was doing that and Marked for Death, bro.
Steven Seagal.
But DX was, you know, they were going at the same time as the NWO. Let's bring up the, God damn, I can't remember. Was it the Nassau Coliseum that they went to where they crossed the bridge? It was up in the northeast somewhere. It might have been the Nassau Coliseum where they went with the tank.
Yes.
Across all they had to do was basically cross a bridge or cross the river, because WCW was in one Coliseum, WWE was in another one, and they were literally, guys, less than 5 miles apart.
Yes.
And so whoever came up with this idea is a genius, and whoever is in WCW making decisions is the biggest idiot of all time. And I'll tell you why right now. Hear me out. So they went. I was watching Raw. Well, I lived on the West Coast, so I don't know if you remember, on the West Coast, you would get to watch Nitro first, because it was an East Coast feed, and then Raw would come on, so you'd basically get 5 or 6 hours of wrestling straight.
Yes.
Remember that? So I watched the Nitro, and then I'm like, then you watch the Raw.
Yeah.
So watching the Raw, you're like, oh my God, dude, this is great, man. They're driving the tank. They're outside. You know, you see fans. It says WCW on the mat. What's the thing called? The marquee outside. Oh my God, dude, they're gonna go in, and then they turn down the parking structure tunnel, and it's open. You're like, dude, these guys they're gonna get on. They're gonna get on. Here comes the gate closing. Dude, whoever made that decision to close that gate is the stupidest, because as soon as they came on there, I would have WCW cameras all over them. They would have been on my TV show and their TV. Dude, everybody would have been watching, because you can't let WWE.
Everybody would have
been able to come in there
on WCW.
No, you can't go in there. And so they would have been, come to the ring. Let's go. Come on. Let's do it. Dude, could you imagine?
Here's the red carpet. Go. That would have been awesome, dude. I mean, but that's just too big of a crossover, man. No, nobody would have done that. But you're right. That would have been good to see.
And you know, since we're pipe dreaming, you could have had DX. Who's the Clique, right?
Yeah.
Hall and Nash. They could have had a little tag team match, you know, and you know, Hall and Nash, you know, they're all buddies with Triple H and Sean Waltman and Shawn Michaels. You know, they're all really good buddies, so they could probably throw on something together quick on the fly. I don't know. Jim McMahon, Vince McMahon would have lost his shit.
Right.
He would have lost his shit.
Yeah. Somebody would have been fired. You're fired.
But that was they ran. You know, they were one of the big reasons that WWE came back like they did, because they were getting killed at that time. And, you know, they were great. They could maybe a little over the top sometimes. You know, that frat boy humor kind of was like, but you know, they're one definitely. We don't rank, but if we do, that's why I always say they're in my probably top 5. They're in my top 5 all time.
Oh, definitely on that one. I'm going to bring up somebody from that we both love, probably from all federations, a lot of federations. The Four Horsemen. The Four Horsemen.
Without a shadow of a doubt, the greatest faction in the history of professional wrestling.
As you know what, I would have to say you're right. There is no weakest link in that faction. Now, we know the originals, right? Ole, Arn, Rick, and Tully, right? Those guys. And J.J. Dillon as the special announcer or special commentary or special
advisor.
Advisor, there you go. Those guys, they ran it. They just ruled. There's just no doubt about what they did. But then they added other guys. Somebody must have got hurt. Then they added Lex Luger. Yeah, he was a horseman at one point. Even Barry Windham, right?
Now, I'll tell you right now, before you get going too far, the incarnation with Barry Windham was my favorite.
Really?
I do remember, when the Four Horsemen all started and stuff. I was never really a big fan of Ole Anderson.
Correct.
He bored me on the mic, where the rest of them could talk. His wrestling was very, I don't know. He just kind of looked awkward at times to me. He was, whatever he was. But I love that Four Horsemen with Barry Windham. Barry Windham, one of the most underrated wrestlers of all time. He was great. He's one of those guys that was never as big as he should have been. We'll probably do a show about people that probably should have been bigger and better. But man, he would have to be towards the top of that list. But man, I think what happened was, you're right. I think Ole Anderson, what happened was the story is that his son had like an amateur wrestling event or tournament, and he went to that instead of going to the show or whatever. I think Ric Flair tells a story on one of those documentaries. And so that was it. And I think they brought in Luger first.
Okay.
Because I think what happened was Luger was in first, and then Windham at one point they had a match, and like they all jumped Luger. Like Barry Windham and Luger had a match for probably the U.S. title or something like that. And then they all ended up jumping Luger because Luger got too big for his bridges or wanted to go off the world title or something like that. But yeah, that Barry Windham one was great.
Yeah. Also, who was on there was Sid Vicious. He was also a member. If you didn't know, Chris Benoit was a member, and also Brian Pillman. They were also part of the Four Horsemen at one point.
Yeah, it wasn't all. What was his name? Roma.
Tony Roma?
No, I don't know what. Forget. Was it? No, it wasn't Tony. Was it? For a while there, he was in the Four Horsemen as well.
We'll call him Roma.
Roma, I don't remember. I'm about to look it up. Google it quick. It was right around the same time as remember that whole episode of the wrestling where they were that one guy that came out wearing the Stormtrooper.
Shockmaster.
The Shockmaster. It was like right around the Shockmaster era or day. It wasn't even an era. It was like a day. That shit. That was hilarious. Dude, the Four Horsemen was great, and I'm gonna tell you why. Let's cut to it. All of those wrestlers that they had could wrestle. They could all talk. I mean, I think everybody knows about Ric Flair. We almost don't even need to talk about Ric Flair because everybody knows.
Yes.
World, like 16-time champ, I believe, something like that. Known as one of the greatest talkers in the history of wrestling, could just get on the mic and talk your ear off, and you're still entertained. Arn Anderson, I think, is one of the guys in that faction that kind of doesn't get the respect he should get. He was a really good talker, great in the ring, told a story, made you want to go watch the match, made you want to go watch him get beat up. And then, you put in with him, Tully Blanchard, when they were the tag team champs.
Oh, man.
They always had at least two of the titles, the heavyweight, the television, the tag team belts, U.S. title. They always had a couple of the belts all the time. They were always at the top. They were always running in a pack. They were jumping everybody. They basically are the blueprint for a faction, how it should operate, size-wise, wrestlers-wise, being able to all talk on the mic. They were just great. They were entertaining every time you got on there. You wanted to go watch them get beat up. And that was what they were supposed to do. That was their job, was to put butts in the seat to watch them get their ass kicked, which they did sometimes. Usually they were winning, though.
Yes, that was another good one. Yeah, the Four Horsemen, dude, they really knew how to wrestle. They knew how to talk. They walked the walk. They showed it. They brought it to the ring. Titles, They just did it, man. That was a great faction, which I still believe it's untouchable today.
It's untouchable. And then they had James J. Dillon, who was a great mouthpiece for them. You know, when he could, you know, I think that he was the financial advisor for Tully Blanchard first before Tully Blanchard went into the Horsemen. So that's kind of how he got his in. But he was always, you know, great, you know, to have in the back. Sometimes he didn't say anything, and you know, but when he did, it was important and it added. He didn't just say something to say something. So that was great to have him there too. And they always hold up the 4 fingers.
That was it, man. That's still today. You know, any wrestling fan, you hold up 4 fingers, you're like, yeah, the Horsemen.
They were great, and if you fast forward, I don't know, probably to about, 2002, 3, 4. I don't know the exact year. Evolution.
Yeah.
So was that about that time, about 2003 or so? I don't know if you have the date.
I don't have the date right now. No.
Man, they were
Batista, Randy, Flair, and Hunter. Yeah, dude.
At the time, I don't think that that was such a weird faction, because I don't think that it was highly regarded at the time it was happening. It was kind of like, because they're really on par as far as if anybody's ever going to get close to the Horsemen, it was that, in my opinion, that faction. Because if you look at the wrestlers, where they were, where they went, where they came from, and the talking, the wrestling ability, always having titles. They had, you know, Triple H world title most of the time. Then they had Randy Orton with the Intercontinental most of the time. And then Flair and Batista were tag champions. At one point, they had all the titles. They had everything. And then, you know, I think that they turned on Orton. And he got kicked out. And then it was just like the 3 of them or whatever. And then Batista and that whole, you know, it kind of went away. It didn't go on as long as it probably should have.
It should have been a little longer.
But, you know, every story has its end. But, man, that when they were together, they were basically the best 4 that company could have put together at any time. And, you know, Randy Orton was only 20 years old, 21?
22,
world champ.
yeah, 22, 23 at the time.
Youngest world champ of all time?
Yeah.
Ever? Is that still his?
I still think it's still running today on that one.
They were just great, dude. And I go back and I look at video or I read about them, and I'm like, man, these guys just were not at the time that it was happening. It's one of those times where you don't realize what's going on right now until you look at it years later, and you're kind of like, shit, dude, that was killer.
Yeah. You know, one old school faction which I want to talk about was the Hedian family. You know, Hedian, Andre the Giant, Hercules, Harley Race, Big John Studd. We haven't even mentioned his name once. King Kong Bundy, King Haku, the Brainbusters, and Paul Orndorff. See, some of these names we haven't talked about in a while.
We haven't talked about a lot of these names.
And Rick Rude, sorry.
I don't want to get backlash here from the nation, but I'm not a big fan of those big guys. I'm not.
Even back in the day when we were a kid, dude, Bundy, Big John Studd.
I really, so, you know, kind of when I started coming into the wrestling, a lot of those guys was like kind of the twilight of their career.
Okay. All right.
You know, I didn't really start really watching wrestling until right around that WrestleMania 2.
All right.
Time. So that's what, 86 or so, about 10 years old, about that time. So I missed most of the careers of the big guys. And man, I did not get off on watching, you know, Andre the Giant. Dude, huge guy. He could have killed anybody at any point, at any time, in any match if he wanted to. But dude, he was so slow.
Correct.
Couldn't move. I didn't get to see him when he was younger, so I didn't get to see. I've seen footage of the agile Andre,
me too.
But I didn't get to live it and see it. Big John Studd. Basically, I've just seen him in a couple matches, but I wasn't a fan of the big guys. But I'm going to tell you, Heenan was one of the greatest managers of all time, if not the greatest. And the Heenan family, dude, you know, you talk about Rick Rude, you talk about Paul Orndorff, you talk about, I believe, did he also, God, the name just escaped me. He also managed Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect.
Oh, correct.
He had some great wrestlers, dude.
He did,
Great wrestlers.
He was a great
in his stable.
Yeah, that was a great stable on that old school. You're right. Most of the time that when the stable was happening, I probably was not around or watching wrestling at the time. I think towards the end of it, I was doing that kind of stuff. One of the other factors I like to bring up is actually one of my favorites is the Freebirds. You know,
Love the Freebirds.
Michael P.S. Hayes. You know, these guys they were just so fun. Just Ronnie Garvin.
Well, Ronnie Garvin wasn't it? Jimmy Garvin.
Sorry, Jimmy Garvin.
Jimmy Garvin, Buddy Roberts, Bam Bam, Gordy, and Michael P.S. Hayes. They were great. They had that huge run. They were always the 6-man. I already gave my thoughts on the 6-man tag.
Correct.
I'm not a big fan of it.
Yeah.
But they had that huge beef with the Von Erichs and WCCW.
Right.
That went on for the whole time they were there. God, they were such innovators. In particular, Michael P.S. Hayes, who, if you guys have ever seen the Freebirds, or if you haven't, he's the guy with I always thought, dude, he was hilarious. He's got the brownish beard, platinum blonde hair,
correct,
right? And then he's got the tights, the pants tights, and I will say almost every single other wrestler that I've seen wear the pants tights, they got the shorts over the top.
Yeah.
He didn't wear the shorts over the top, dude. So it always looked a little funny to me, like, oh my God, dude, what's this guy wearing, dude? I can see his little bits. But man, he was an innovator. He was the first wrestler to use, or the Freebirds were the first to use rock music,
right,
as their entrance to the ring.
Yeah.
They were the first, yes, you're going to hear me correctly, the first group of wrestlers, probably the first wrestlers to sing their own theme song, their own entrance music with Bad Street USA, which was a great that song really sounds like them, like the way they wrestle, like they were just innovators through and through. They got the heat, the crowd, the people want to jump out of their seats and kill them, and
right,
man, they just
hated them and loved them at the same time, or loved to hate them.
Yeah, and Michael P.S.A. was one of the greatest talkers.
He still is, bro.
He's one of the great. Yeah,
he's a good teacher too. He's still in there.
And then I was more of a fan of the Freebirds, as shorter lived as it was with Jimmy Garvin. I just wasn't a Buddy Roberts fan.
Mm-hmm.
So I liked Jimmy Garvin a lot better. He could talk. He was a better wrestler, I think. But dude, Bam Bam, Gordy was one of the most underrated guys, and probably the most underrated guy in that group. Dude, that guy was a big 320-pound. He was kind of like Bam Bam Bigelow a little bit. I wonder if maybe that's kind of where he got his name. Bam Bam Bigelow got
maybe.
If any of you guys know who that is, he was the wrestler that had his top of his head tattooed with flames. Maybe you've seen him, a cursory glance. But man, Gordy was such a good wrestler, dude. He really underrated. Could move for a big guy. He was agile, told a great story in the ring, and he could wrestle down on the mat. He could, he wasn't getting up on the top rope, but he'd go second rope, give you an elbow, all that kind of stuff. But he was definitely. He's passed away since then. Almost all those guys have passed away. I think Jimmy Garvin might still be alive. But
yeah, and Michael's still
alive.
Yeah.
But man, they were great. They were innovators, and man, I think you can tell how much I really like them because I just keep gushing about them on every episode we talk about them. But yeah, dude,
that's cool.
They were
great, man. Yeah. Just to bring up some new school stuff from AEW's The Inner Circle. This is Chris Jericho's faction with Sammy Guevara, Jake Hager, Santana, and Ortiz. Those guys were. It's a new faction. Or faction of today wrestling, and they're great, man. They're fun. They have they mix and match guys, and they do from 5-guy matches to tag teams to 3-on-3 stuff. And Inner Circle is good, fun, exciting, stuff. That of course it's Chris Jericho. I don't know if you saw that, but Chris Jericho stole the Appetite for Destruction type of logo. So for the Inner Circle, so he did the same thing. He did the Iron Cross, and then put pictures of the guys in skulls, like what they would look like on their shirt in the Inner Circle. And I was like, damn, Jericho.
I'm not watching probably as much AEW as I should. Talking about wrestling, I'm more of an old school kind of guy. But I am a huge fan of Chris Jericho. A huge fan of him and his 1001 holds.
Right.
arm bar. Dude, remember that? That was great. Well, that's a gimmick we got to talk about sometime. That was
Chris Jericho is running wild. He's doing. He was the first big name for these guys, and he knew what he was doing. He still has it in him. He's still running it. He's still having fun, wrestling, storylines, doing what he needs to do to survive on that one. Yeah. Another faction from the AEW is the Elite, which is AKA also known as the Bullet Club, the Young Bucks, Cody, Kenny Omega, Hangman, Adam Page. They started off, and those guys too. They brought it from New Japan and kept that steam ball rolling, and brought it to a new federation and ran wild with it, and still very much running strong. These guys are still doing really good with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, all those wrestlers you just named off are great. They're top of the heap in each of their what's the word I'm looking for? Disciplines, I guess. The Young Bucks, the tag team, and Kenny Omega with the title. And did Hangman just win the title a couple weeks ago?
Hangman won a shot to win the title. Won a shot to wrestle for the title.
And Cody has been wrestling Malachi, right? That
yeah.
So they're all, aren't they all like producers, or they have their foot in the
in
booking or whatever,
production like and stuff like that.
Seems like they're doing a better job than the NWO did when they were all involved with that. They were kind of just saying me. Hopefully they learned their lesson.
Yeah, maybe. Hopefully, you never know. I mean, on that kind of stuff. But I also still want to talk about the New Japan version of the Bullet Club. So back in 2013. Prince Devitt, aka Finn Balor, started the Bullet Club. He wanted to. He started as a small thing and ran wild with it too. And same thing with some of those guys being who he brought in Japan, and that really when that ball started to roll, that steam, that brought my eyes to New Japan. Like I've heard of them, but I really didn't hear them. Guys like Kenny Omega, AJ Styles, of course the Young Bucks, Doc Gallows, Carl Anderson, Marty Scurll. These guys were great on New Japan, the Gorillas of Destiny, those tag team dudes, they just ran wild with it, dude. They knew what they were doing in New Japan, and, they needed to start off and break off into other faction, when these guys got too big for their bridges and took off.
Yeah, whenever I would get the chance to watch New Japan, it wasn't on very often over here. I mean, I think they started to get a weekly show going, but man, they had a lot of people in that Bullet Club.
Yeah,
and obviously, I think it's well documented. It was really inspired by the NWO, and that's where it all kind of came from.
Correct.
Not like the NWO started it, but that's where the idea for it kind of came from. But you see them all like kind of splinter off, like AJ Styles and Carl Anderson and
Doc Gallows.
They did their own thing in WWE, and then they split off, but they always kind of find themselves back to each other. And I mean, it just shows the closeness, the brotherhood, I guess. No matter where they go, they're going to find each other and always kind of group together. And
exactly. And, keep it going and wrestle and storylines and, ride partners and whatever they kept it going, man. They're doing that really good.
I'm kind of going to change it up a little bit. I want to talk about some factions that were a little bit smaller.
Okay.
Maybe weren't as popular, maybe weren't as big as the NWO or the Horsemen, or held in that high of regard. One I want to talk about is the Nation of Domination.
Ooh, yeah.
Now, the Nation of Domination was during the Attitude Era, and it consisted of the original leader was Ron Simmons, who went by the name at that time of Farouk. And then it had Mustafa. What was it? He was the pimp dude. Gosh darn it. The name escapes me right now.
The Godfather?
Godfather, yeah. Okay. The Godfather. And then
D'Lo Brown.
D'Lo Brown. And then a little bit later, they had a couple other people in there. And then a little bit later, little old Rocky Maivia. ends up joining the Nation.
Yeah, but he was at that time. He still was
wasn't
mid card or lower than mid card type of
mid card, low card
wrestler, or
Yeah, he was still rocking Mafia. He was still probably wearing the tassels to the ring.
Correct.
The vest, the tassel vest, or the wrist thing with the tassels from the shoulder
Correct.
to the wrist. He was a mid carder, solid in the mid, not high, not low, right in the middle. And I think that was. I don't think anybody knew what was going to happen with him was going to happen, but I think that at that point, putting him with those guys was absolutely the right decision, no matter which way you look at it. And man, that's one of those things where you take that opportunity and you run with it, because, you could slowly see it evolve and see the shift of power go from, they were battling these outside forces, but then they also started battling inside, and you could see Rocky Maivia changing to The Rock.
Yeah.
And kind of taking the power from Farouk, and just took over the Nation, finally leaving the Nation. And man, I mean, one of the greatest wrestlers, in WWE ever had with The Rock, especially during that Attitude Era. The Nation, doesn't really, and then you had D'Lo Brown, who was actually a really good wrestler.
Oh yeah, definitely.
He was a really good wrestler. I would have to fact check myself, but I'm sure he had. I think he and Godfather, before he was a Godfather, when he was in the Nation, I'm sure they had tag titles at some point, those two guys together. I think that Farouk had Intercontinental Gold. I don't know if he was ever world champ when he was.
Yeah, I don't think so.
And The Rock had the title, obviously, when he was in there. But man, they were solid. That's one of those, like, they didn't have a weak link. They had one guy that was far superior to anybody else, but they didn't have anybody that was like, that guy sucks or he's terrible. They were all really, really, really good wrestlers.
Yeah. Do you remember the Mean Street Posse?
Is that from Greenwich, Connecticut?
Yes. Or they called the Greenwich Posse.
Yeah,
they did it.
dude,
Shane's buddies.
Were they the cheer squad?
No, that was a Spirit Squad. That's what I'm bringing up next.
Okay. I'm getting them. Actually, you know what?
Yes.
I'm getting them mixed up. So
they're very similar.
The Mean Street Posse was Shane McMahon's posse in sweater vests.
Yes. Pete Gas,
yes.
Rodney, Joey Habs, that kind of stuff.
Those are like frat boy.
Yeah,
names. That's like
they came out as Shane's like upper class
Yeah.
buddies from college, and they were definitely mid card. They were definitely that fun dumbness, but it was still good, dude. Mean Street Posse, man. They're just good on that one. And then you brought it up, but there's also, you're right, the Spirit Squad.
they had some good wrestlers.
Yeah, on the Spirit Squad, check it out, man. They had Kenny,
Dude,
Johnny.
Hold up. Just stop for a second. Kenny was what was his last name in the group? Do you remember? Dykstra. It was Dykstra. He was. I mean, he's not the best guy. Obviously, we know who you're headed towards in the
Yes.
list of people who came out of the only guy that came out of that group to ever do anything. And most people probably don't even know who you're gonna say, but I know who you're gonna say. I thought that at that time, dude, he was the best guy. Man, he would do those splashes off the top rope, and
That was a real tall one, right? The real tall
Yes.
guy.
Dude. I was like, oh wow,
Yeah.
this guy's. Remember I talked about in an episode, you look at a group and you're like, I'm like, that's the guy.
Yes.
That's gonna be the. So maybe he got injured or something, but man, he was great, dude. Go ahead.
So we had Kenny, Johnny, Mickey, and then the last one is Nikki, which we all know Nikki was Dolph Ziggler.
Dolph. That's
Yeah.
in the Spirit Squad. They were come out in their green. Weren't they in green and white? Were
Yes.
their two colors? And
Yes.
man, they weren't. Yeah, they were okay. They were okay. They were entertaining for what they were.
Correct.
I mean,
Correct.
usually when they come on the show, you're usually a 6-pack deep into Raw or whatever.
Or cracking up, or what are these guys doing, and stuff like that, man. Heck yeah, man. That was
I can't remember who they were, like who their association was with. Like who were they?
the Spirit Squad. I don't know. Could have been Shane too. I mean, he brought out some different factions and stuff.
Some of those lesser known factions, a lot of times because you had to kind of do something. One I didn't even think about until right now, this very second, right now. That was a smaller one. That probably no one, you may not even have it in your novel over there.
in my Big Talk Nation,
novel.
Big Talk
Big Talk novel.
Big Talk book.
We got to get a shot of that dude and put it up on the Instagram.
No way,
dude.
man. That's personal.
It's got a centerfold. It's
The Shawn Michaels centerfold.
Don't you have that in your wallet?
Not anymore. It's digital now.
In your digital wallet.
In my digital wallet.
NFT. The smaller factions, a lot of times were doing the craziest stuff because sometimes they had the people that were thrown together, and just kind of like the Spirit Squad was probably just like, oh, we're some young guys in development. You, and you're together. One of the groups that had 2 people that ended up being world champion was 3-man band.
Right.
And I didn't think about them till right now. And obviously the biggest guy that came out of that was Drew McIntyre.
Correct.
Who is, was world champ, perennial.
Yeah.
Currently, on the roster is one of their top guys. Mm-hmm. That's one of those things where I saw them the first time come out, and it was Slater. Mm-hmm. It was McIntyre and
Jinder Mahal.
Jinder Mahal.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the?
Yeah.
What?
Who brought? And then especially Drew, because he was the chosen one that
Drew McIntyre. I really did, and I'm not saying this in hindsight. I always really did like
Me too.
him. I always did like him. I always thought he kind of he's falls in that Dolph Ziggler kind of category where it's like, man, they're really not using this guy right. They're not using him right. And then they disappeared. Dolph didn't disappear, but he kind of just jobs to everybody now. But man, that 3-man band, it was like every week, what are they doing? What are they doing? What are they doing? And then they kind of just grow on you. They grow on you. And then I don't know if they ever had titles. They probably maybe won the title once, a token title run for just, their hard work and efforts and, making it to every show on time or something. They probably got, a little bit of a run. But, I mean, Mahal, world champ. I think because they were trying to get into the India market personally is why he was the champ that whole time.
Right.
They did that whole thing right
yes.
there. I love our Indian listeners, by the way. They're some of my favorite. And McIntyre has now top of the heap. I mean, really.
Correct. So what they did with McIntyre was they did let him go, right? And they told him to, hey, you know what? Find yourself, center yourself. We're not saying we won't ever take you back, but hey, do the independence for a little bit and find some magic again, or your smile. Sorry. And then he did. He did really good in the independence and came back on NXT and then shined on that. And then they brought him up and he was ready to go, man. He was always one of these guys.
Impact, right? Didn't he go to Impact?
Yeah.
And he was NWA World Champ, right? I remember when he was the champ, hearing him do an interview where he really wanted to go old school, and he wanted to travel the world and go to Japan and go to Europe, go to Mexico, all over the U.S. and actually defend that title all over the place. He was really excited about that.
Yeah.
Then I'd say within a year after I heard that interview, they brought him back to WWE and his run started. But man, he's a badass.
Right.
He's a badass.
Right.
He put on a bunch of weight too in between the time he left and when he came back. He probably
probably more muscle too, but we'll say for that, give it 15 pounds of muscle.
Yeah.
He's
a big dude.
He had
it's almost as big as me. Yeah. Here's, you know what? I didn't do probably my due diligence on homework as I should have for this episode, but I got some names that are really coming to the top of my head. This guy, I know we're going to talk about him in a later episode. We got some other things lined up in the bank we're going to do. But I want to talk about Paul E. Dangerously and the Dangerous Alliance.
Ooh.
Nobody, and I mean nobody, talks about this. Nobody talks about the Dangerous Alliance. You had, at the time, Stunning Steve Austin, Beautiful Bobby. You had Arn Anderson.
Right.
You had Larry Zbyszko. And you had Rick Rude.
Wow.
Now, that is... I'm not a big Zbyszko fan, but he could still wrestle.
He's
he
a
could
good
still
wrestler,
talk.
though, man.
But I wasn't a fan of his.
Okay.
But, man, they had some matches, dude. Those guys were at that time, were some of the best wrestlers in the industry. And they were all in one stable, and no one talks about it. Obviously, you know what happened to Steve Austin, took off like wildfire. Bobby Eaton, the greatest tag team wrestler of all time. That's me saying it, not someone else. Arn Anderson, one of the best talkers from the Four Horsemen, knows how to be in a faction, knows what it's all about. Rick Rude just
Same thing. Knows how to be in a faction.
knows how to be in a
knows how to be a single wrestler.
And then you got Paul E. Dangerously, who was kind of an. I mean, when I saw the Dangerous Alliance kind of form, it was kind of like, that was like the first time I kind of really remember seeing Paul E. Dangerously. Remember, I don't think he had the ponytail yet. He had a little bit of a mullet going, and he had that cell phone.
Yes.
And
Zach Morris.
Originally, it was like a house phone with the antenna, and he'd be like out at ringside. He said he needs it all the time, because of the deals he's making, and getting contracts for all of his guys and all this kind of stuff. And man, I remember they had that War Games match. Was that like against like the Road Warriors and Sting and Luger or something like that, dude? And it was one of the best War Games matches. I think Sting was in it. Man, they just that's a faction that does not get its due. I had to talk about them. The Dangerous Alliance, WCW, dude. That was 91-ish, I would think. 90, 91, maybe ran like to 92 or so. Man.
So I'm going to bring up two factions which I loved from the ECW days. So I loved the Dudleys. So at the time, I think the Dudleys, before they became the Dudley Boys, they brought out, there was like 5 of them. So there was, Bubba, Devon, Sign Guy Dudley, Big Dick Dudley, and then Spike Dudley. A faction like that, they all wore, tie-dye stuff and overalls, and they all supposedly were all from the same dad and different moms or something. Yeah.
The Dudleys were great. The Dudleys were great. One of the greatest tag teams of all time. But, Spike was a freaking crash test dummy.
Right.
Big Dick Dudley was just a monster.
Correct.
And Sign Guy or whatever.
Yeah, Sign Guy.
He didn't really do anything.
He was outside. Sign. Yeah.
And man, that was a good. Yeah, I'm right there with you, dude. That was a good faction. I mean, ECW didn't get to really see him that much. Some of these you got to kind of go back and kind of get on Peacock and go back and watch.
Check it out. Yeah.
I mean, they when they first came up, ECW wasn't big yet.
No.
So they were one of the first, right after Public Enemy kind of was their biggest tag team, that they had. Then, when they kind of got a little bit of heat, a little bit of, like you like to say, a little bit of steam, they were able to get some other people. And, Dudley's was one of the, the first, probably the first faction they had. And it was great. It was great. And, it's good to be able to go back and kind of watch those kind of things and see them. And, because I missed them. I missed them when they happened.
From ECW/WCW days, I loved Raven's Nest or The Flock. Raven, Stevie Richards, The Pitbulls, Canyon, Billy Kidman, Lodi, and Perry Saturn. And there was even a
that's like half the roster,
right?
ECW,
one of those,
dude.
half the roster. There was even a time where Cactus Jack was following Raven, so he kind of at that time I think it was the ECW days. They pushed him in on Raven's Nest, but towards WCW they of course Cactus Jack turned into Mankind and Dude Love, but that was fun. That was good stuff. That was from ECW. Was another one of those factions that I loved too, and from them.
Do you remember what was Raven's name before he was in ECW?
Was it Johnny Polo?
Johnny Polo, dude. I was watching some old pay-per-views, WCW pay-per-views. I was like, Johnny Polo. Oh my God, dude, Raven. Bro.
Right. I saw that too. I was watching something and I saw that.
If you've seen Raven, and you've never seen Johnny Polo, or if you've seen Johnny Polo and never seen Raven, think about the exact opposite person. They are on the opposite ends of the spectrum of what you would think two people would look like. Dude.
Yeah, wow. They knew how to come up with characters, Hey, so bringing up, we're going to go back to WWE days. One of the factions I did love, and which was crazy too, was Nexus. You remember Nexus?
Yeah, man. I think we're going to butt heads on this one.
Okay.
They made an impact when they first came, but man.
They made an impact. That's the whole thing. They made an impact for a month.
Yeah, they did. They came out, beat up Cena the first time, tore up the whole set, the whole ring, everything, and then they did it a couple more times. And it was who did we get out of there? We got Wade Barrett.
Yeah, Wade Barrett.
Who I think was
David Otunga.
David Otunga, who was
you had Ryback, but he had a different name at the time on that one. Justin Gabriel, Heath Slater, your favorite.
Yeah, from Three Man Band.
Daniel Bryan. Or Brian Daniels, however you want to say it.
Danielson.
Yeah, Danielson. And then that's all when that faction was going on. And then when Nexus was losing their steam, they added CM Punk. So he was on that.
Yeah, and he was like their leader.
Yeah,
He was like a new leader.
I think Curtis Axel was in there for a little bit too, and then also Bray Wyatt. There was also when these guys
Before he
first
was
came
Bray
in,
Wyatt,
before he was
before he was Bray.
the Fiend, that kind of stuff. Yeah, so all those guys, and they did. You're right. They had steam. They came in and made everybody look. Oh my God, what's going on here? Blah 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 blah. But it didn't really go from that point on.
Yeah, man.
But I did like it. I mean, I remember that Raw when they destroyed Cena and destroyed the ring and stuff like that. I thought, oh man, look at these young guys. But
I think the problem maybe, and I'm just kind of evolving these thoughts as we go right now. I didn't know you were going to bring them up. One of the things, and another faction I want to talk about, I'm just going to interject them now. We can talk about them more later because I want to. The Shield. Because what I was going to say was about Nexus. Oh, maybe it's because they just threw some young guys together. But that's what they did with the Shield. So what's the difference here? Okay, Nexus, who talked? One guy. Wade Barrett was only talking, and then it was everybody else. You look at the Shield, dude, they could all talk.
Correct.
They were all different the way they talked. Ambrose was crazy.
Yeah.
Reigns was all business, and Seth Rollins had a little bit of he was business. He was like a combination of the two. He would throw out a little tongue-in-cheek thing when he was talking kind of thing. Nexus, I didn't think everybody in Nexus was a good wrestler.
Correct.
Shield, all great wrestlers.
Yes.
At the time, did we know? But you could see it at the time. So you kind of look at these things like, why did one survive, and why did one become one of the best factions of all time, and why did one kind of fizzle out? And I think, pointing out some of those things, because they had some good wrestlers, obviously. Bryan Danielson is one of the best wrestlers of all time. Wade Barrett, I think, is vastly underrated.
Yeah,
he was really good.
And that mic skills, man, wow. So when he was injured, they had him,
when he'd go up on the scissor lift and do I've got some bad news.
Yeah,
that was great. And then the Gabriel,
Justin Gabriel.
I thought he was really good too, but he never got any mic time. I don't know if maybe he couldn't talk. He was lower mid card wrestler.
Yeah, just like Heath Slater, lower mid card.
Heath Slater, I didn't think was a good talker though. He was like,
no.
He was like a white boy or something. It's just like, dude, I can't listen to you, dude. You're not like me. But so let's transit. Do you want to talk some more about Nexus?
No, I was good on that. I got something else to bring up.
And they had Ryback, who I never did like ever at any point.
No,
I want to put that out there so that's transcripted. The Shield.
Yeah.
The Hounds of Justice, as they are called. Dude, those guys came in and basically kind of did the same thing. Came in, ran roughshod, kicked everyone's ass, tore shit up, but they didn't fizzle away. And, they were tag team champs, intercontinental champ. I think they had the U.S. champ, probably both. But, man, they could all talk. So you didn't have to rely on one guy to talk for everybody.
They also had the tag team. I think Roman and Seth had the tag for a bit.
Man, as highly regarded, sometimes I go back and forth on stuff, and sometimes I'm kind of a dick, and I don't want to give people as much due as they probably should get. And the Shield is one of those groups because I'm just not a big Roman Reigns guy. I'm not a big Roman.
Still today, still he hasn't run you over on.
No, still today. He's way better as a heel, and I'm so glad they stopped trying to shove him down your throat as a
correct,
face.
Right? I'm with you on that.
So that's great. But man, when you look back, you're like, oh yeah, dude, they were fucking awesome. They were awesome.
Yeah.
And they went from being known like a heel team to being that kind of like Austin, like anti-hero kind of thing, and now the fans are cheering for them. Then they were going against Triple H, the corporation, or whatever whatever enigma they had going on right then with Triple H. And then of course you get the turn, Seth Rollins doing the turn, and all its history from there. But man, that faction was great, dude, and they definitely got to be in the top 5. If you're gonna do a list, they got to be in the top 5.
Yeah. Do you remember the greatest feud the Shield had?
Who is that?
The Wyatt family.
Oh yeah, dude.
That I remember when those three, got against the other three, and I remember that Raw. I was like, holy shit, this is what I thought this is pay-per-view quality.
Yeah, that's when they were they were both,
Yeah.
there's another faction. They were apexing.
Yeah.
They were apex. And it's good sometimes to have those smaller, 3-person, maybe 4.
4, I think, is the best.
4 is the best, but dude, you got the Brood.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking the Brood, you're talking the Wyatts, you're talking the Shield, dude. World champion, world champion, world champion, world champion, world champion, world champion. I mean, 6 of the 9 guys.
Yeah.
Intercontinental champions, tagged. Sometimes it's easier when you got a smaller group than 27, 28 NWO members or Bullet Club or whatever is going on. These guys are crazy.
Too much, right? Stop.
Yeah, stop, dude. If you can't count them on one hand, it's time.
You know what? Just saying about that, I think AEW has too many factions where every guy, they're just faction, and it's too much for me. I don't like it. Give me just a couple of tag guys. Give me a couple of single wrestlers. If you want, hang out with some other people, fine, but not another faction. There was one time, all they did was just bring out faction after faction after faction, and this was like a couple of months ago, and I'm too much for me. It was too much. This was before Punk and before Daniel Bryan's, entered the ring and stuff like that. But but from the Wyatt family, I do want to mention Luke Harper, Rowan, and then Bray Wyatt. Though that faction was really good before they added Strowman too. Mm-hmm. Even when they added Strowman, there's 4 of them. But those, when it was the Shield versus the Wyatt family, I liked those 3. Mm-hmm. That feud was good, exciting, kept me wanting to come back on Monday nights and SmackDowns and all the pay-per-views and shit like that. So that was a good storyline that kept me going. And it didn't drag out for months and months and months, but at least it dragged out enough to where, okay, we're going to do it for the next 6 weeks. And it, delivered.
It's kind of like when, like you say, there's too many factions. I'm not saying they had too many, but it's kind of like WWE. Remember in that Attitude Era, there was that time where they had, the Brood. They had DX. They had the Acolytes before it was just 2 guys. It was a whole bunch of guys. Then you had like the Undertaker with his group of minions. Then you had the Oddities. And then, I don't know if I already said Nation. You had the Nation. You had all
the corporation.
The corporation. And then you had this one I'm going to talk about, which is going to probably surprise a lot of people that I was not a big fan of. And that, not the tag team, the faction of the Hart Foundation.
Right.
I just wasn't on board. I didn't like them, but maybe that was the goal. So maybe they were doing their job, but man, it just didn't. The worst thing you can do, and a wrestler will tell you this, the worst thing you can do is not care.
Okay.
Like not care, not hate, not love. Just if you don't care, that's the worst way.
Okay.
You
Correct.
can feel.
Correct. And that's what you were. You just didn't care.
I was like, dude, Bret Hart, stop complaining. Dude, shut up and wrestle. Dude, you're my favorite wrestler of all time, dude. And I can't even listen to you. I got to mute the TV.
But you had Bret. You had his brother Owen in there, right? Which both of them had many feuds. You had the British Bulldog in there. You had Neidhart, and then you had Pillman.
Pillman wasn't wrestling anymore, really. He had the accident, so his foot, his ankle or whatever, and so he wasn't really wrestling. And I think that they amped up that crazy Pillman thing just too much, because it was just too much.
Okay.
Anvil was done. So basically it was the Bulldog. Bret Hart was getting on my nerves. And so it was the Bulldog and Anvil and Owen. Owen at that point was the best, probably the guy I would like to see most in the ring at that time, when him and Bulldog were tag team. Remember, dude, he would come out with the Slammies. Mm-hmm. They'd have the belts. They'd always be feuding with the New Age Outlaws or one of the other groups. They had a lot of tag teams during that time. Just coming to my mind, dude, they had a lot of tag teams during that time.
Tag teams is fine, dude. A tag team, okay. Tag team, 2-3 guys, whatever, big deal.
I'm just side noting, dude. I'm just saying.
Factions, man. Stop bringing the factions in.
They had, there were a lot of factions at that time.
Why don't you just bring the Four Horsemen black and white, Four Horsemen red and blue, Four Horsemen green and yellow? Come on. Stop.
Green and yellow? Didn't they bring back a Four Horsemen? I don't remember. Was it late WCW or in the WWE when they bought him out, and it was like Dean Malenko? But that was in WCW before it went down. It was
Wasn't
Dean
that
Malenko,
like you said with Romo?
It was Malenko, Dean Malenko, who has one less hold than Jericho. It was Chris Benoit.
Okay.
It was Ric Flair and Arn Anderson were there. I don't know if Arn was wrestling.
Yeah.
And I think there was one more person. I know that's 5.
Wasn't it Vicious?
It may have been somebody, but man, it was like, oh, Jesus Christ.
Right.
Oh, Steve McMichael. That piece of shit, dude. That guy was horrible.
Wasn't he a football player too?
That guy was trash. That guy was trash. God, somebody tag him on this podcast, dude, so you can hear this, dude. He was garbage. Yeah, he played for the Chicago Bears. I think he was like a defensive lineman or an offensive lineman, and I don't know how he got in there. And he wore those cheesy ass football jersey shorts.
Yeah, exactly.
Wasn't he married to Deborah? Were they?
No.
That was like his lady, like
maybe.
I think so.
Maybe
that was like his valet out there.
Yeah.
Whatever, dude. But man, that was like a late incarnation, weren't it?
Yeah.
I shouldn't even have brought it up.
So 2 factions I'm going to bring back from Impact Wrestling, right? One of my favorites that got me good was Aces and Eights. Now, this really was a good surprise. It was a good grab. The storyline grabbed me and kept me coming week to week to week to week until they revealed who the main guy was. And when they did, I loved it. I was sold hook, line, and sinker. Of course, the main guy was Bully Ray. So it wasn't Bubba Ray anymore. It's Bully Ray. And remember, Aces and Eights was kind of like a Sons of Anarchy style guys.
Yeah.
They had like leather jackets or vest, and they kind of come in. They kind of had some ho-hum guys, but they had some, main eventers too. Brother Devon, Mr. Anderson.
Didn't like him.
Doc Gallows. A guy named Canucks. Garrett Bischoff. I think it was Bischoff's son or something like that. And then Wes Briscoe. Those guys were in there. That was Aces and Eights, man. And it was fun. So they didn't last a whole lot, but to get to the storyline rolling when it started,
they were there for a while. They had a. I don't want to over exaggerate, but I think they had at least a year run.
Yeah, because it started off like
slow burn.
You
know how I love those, dude. I love that, dude.
That's why I said they did it well, and it had me going. It had me. I heard about it. Something was going on, and what the hell, man? And then from also Impact, one of the main ones we talked about was Main Event Mafia. Just real quick on this one, man. We have Nash, Kurt Angle, Booker T, Scott Steiner, Sting, and Samoa Joe. Yeah. The Main Event Mafia. These guys came out. These guys are probably their biggest stars. They all got together trying to trump the new young guys. I wouldn't say young bucks. The new young guys coming in, trying to make a name for themselves.
It's almost like an NWO 2.0.
Yeah.
Let's get all of our senior, best wrestlers together in one group.
Exactly.
And not let anybody else at the top.
Yeah.
Push them down to the
bottom. They all came out in suits, and we're the main event guys. That type of stuff.
You can't get past us.
Yeah, you can't get past us.
Good enough where you can't refuse.
All right, one of the last factions of the today, I would say from NXT, is the Undisputed Era. Loved them. These guys, from Adam Cole, Bobby Fish, Kyle O'Reilly, and Roderick Strong, came in and ran amok, ran wild, got titles, hold the titles for a very long time, won the tag titles for 2 or 3 times. The War Games, they won. They were just, that was a good faction for however it ran. And of course, the court ran its course, but for when it was, Undisputed Era was really good and fun, and I did love it. I didn't buy into like, as soon as they came out with a shirt, buy it. I should have, but I didn't, because and towards the end or towards the middle of it, when it was real hot, I was like, darn it, I didn't buy the original shirt. Now I look like a poser if I buy the latest one.
Yeah, right. I've had this shirt from the beginning. Right?
Yeah,
not the new one.
Yeah.
Any other factions you want to bring up? I'm kind of out right now. I'm pretty much talked about everybody I want to talk about. I know we probably missed some people. There's so many.
Oh yeah.
Whenever we do these episodes, there's so many we can talk about. So much we can talk about. We're gonna miss some stuff. Hopefully we hear about it from the nation. Like, oh, you forgot these guys. You forgot these guys. You forgot these guys.
Well, good. I'm glad they're talking or texting or emailing us. Last one, Imperium, which is UK NXT. Walter, Alexander Wolf, a guy named Fabian, and Marcel. These 4 guys, awesome. They're a great faction in the UK from NXT. Love them. And they're coming to America now, so now they're coming over and joining regular NXT and stuff like that. Good stuff.
Love it. Love it. You know, I need to start watching more of the new stuff. You know, you rave about it and you talk about it a lot. I'm going to have to start watching some more, man.
I need all I can get, man. Wrestling.
Yeah. Quick, before we go, on the spot, greatest match of all time. Go.
Ricky Steamboat and Macho Man.
From WrestleMania 3, that's mine as well. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this episode. Remember, we're on Instagram at BigTalkCG. We can also get a hold of us on email at bigtalkcg@gmail.com. We're also on the Twitter machine, same handle, at BigTalkCG. We're on Podbean, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Player FM, TuneIn Radio, and Listen Notes. It's a smaller one that carries a lot of indie podcasts. Give it a listen. We're just got our arms in a couple other things, and we're going to see what we're going to come up with coming up soon. And, you know, worldwide, big in Japan.
There you go.
We're going to be in North Korea soon.
Sounds good.
All right, guys. So until next episode, later.
See ya.